It's
right.
portable.
Mm-hmm.
It's,
you can move it anywhere.
It's really that brings up another topic, which is really important, I think, is folks need to realize how many plants they can grow in one flat. I mean, so when we talk about how many flats or how much supplemental lights do you need to produce a sufficient amount of plants for a typical vegetable garden, it's not very many flats, as you guys know, because one flat generates an enormous amount of seedlings.
Well, yeah, I mean, your plug trays, they're going to start out. I think you can get as low as like 24 cell. I mean, those are, of course, going to be a huge plug. But like some of the things that we grow at the nursery, we're at like 288 cells per tray.
Yeah.
So you got to be careful about what you're growing.
Exactly. How many tomatoes are you really going to want that year? Or green peppers.
Especially for the backyard gardener, yes. In our application, it works just fine.
Yeah.
Well, I was actually going to say that this year we're actually having to cut back even from buying an entire flat of certain stuff. Like last year, we bought an entire 288 tray of dill. We threw away a lot of dill because, I mean, as delicious as dill is...
We didn't throw it away, we composted it.
Okay, well, it didn't make it out the door and find its forever home in somebody's backyard. It made it to the compost pile.
I called it my catch crop in the greenhouse. It was my way of companion planting in our greenhouse.
I guess you need more cucumbers to make pickles.
Yeah, exactly. You need a lot more cucumbers. But so even from a nursery setting, an entire flat of dill was too much. You know,
right.
We're cutting back. We're not actually ordering dill. We're going to grow it ourselves this year because sometimes buying the plug trays is easier from a nursery to just pot them up and have a plant that's ready to go sooner without worrying about, germination rates and all that kind of stuff. But, there's a lot of plants that come out of 2 square feet.
An enormous amount. And home gardeners really want to, when they even purchase their seed and when they do the actual seeding, we want to be conscious of how much of each crop we're germinating. We don't want to underdo it because we want to account for loss, but I think the tendency is probably to overseed and then to have excess, which just brings us back to the point that for a home gardener, you don't need a lot of square footage to start plants.
Right.
So I'm going to ask you a question because you are proficient, or you are very knowledgeable in crop production in greenhouses. So what would you think would be the best crop for just an average backyard gardener to grow and get the most use out of? What would be the most cost-efficient thing for them to grow?
Hands down, greens. I mean, greens are just, especially in our climate, if you're talking about getting a financial return out of your vegetative greenhouse space, if you're trying to grow tomatoes in January, you are heating it so much, and the production that you're getting out of your tomatoes is never going to pay for how much heat you're using, which it kind of asks that question, are you going to buy those cruddy tomatoes that we were talking about last week that are shipped up from Florida, or are you going to spend a lot of energy and grow them here locally in order to get your fresh tomato fix? And my answer to that is wait. Just wait until at least April when we're starting to grow tomatoes, at least in the United States and in more normal climates. I would definitely say that cold hardy greens like kale, lettuces, arugula, chard, even stuff like broccolini or broccoli rabe. So you kind of get that broccoli thing going in there. You could grow your cabbages and such like that, but they take up so much space that if you're talking about gardening for dollars, your salad greens or your kale greens, these things that go really tall and they stay compact, they can share space really well. They don't need a lot of soil underneath of them for competition purposes, and they don't have high nutrient needs.
And as I'm going to steal your words, the pick and come again.
Yes, cut and
Come again, and those are the greens that in the store are going to cost you. The Mizuna arugula, the special lettuces are going to cost you $4 or $5 for a little bag.
They will, and they'll never
compare.
taste as good. And they're going to be already older and dying and maybe getting moldy. So
okay, I'm super excited. We're growing purple spinach this year.
Oh, terrific!
I can't wait.
Beautiful too, and that's the other thing. A lot of these vegetables, the greens, or the charts, for example, can be very, very pleasing in a garden setting.
They're gorgeous. They're great ornamental plants as well. I
Yeah.
mean, if anybody's ever thought about switching your yard over to an edible landscape, I highly recommend it. I mean, there's so many different things that you could
Sure.
do in your yard.
And back to good things to grow in the greenhouse for somebody here in Boise. So my background, I started a farm after I got out of college, and we installed a 24 by 60 foot greenhouse at my property. And none of that greenhouse space, except for maybe a few tables, was used for actual propagation. We actually built raised beds in the entire greenhouse to be able to produce all winter long. In the area of Arizona that I was in, it was actually very much like Boise. I think that our spring came a little bit earlier there and our fall came a little bit later, but as far as our base temperatures, we were really getting to be about the same. And so we created raised beds made out of Trex and filled them with good soil. And we raised them to be about 2 feet off the ground. And one of the things that we did grow all winter long there, and I would sell to the local markets, is carrots and beets and turnips and radishes, things that carrots take quite a bit of time, but getting baby beets out of there in the middle of winter, oh, that was a huge, huge winter. Radishes go really fast, and these are things that a lot of the local markets aren't having a lot of people producing, because in the middle of winter when the ground's frozen, even though it's a frost tolerant plant, it's not going to grow in an ice block.
Right.
So you've got to at least have that warming factor of, even if it's just daytime sunlight going in there and thawing that ground for the plants to be able to grow. And they'll tolerate those cold nighttime temperatures a lot of the time without dying. When we got down to 2 the other day, that might have been borderline. But the greenhouse that we have at work,
It's still,
with no heat in there and without anything else going on except for just the sunlight that warms the beds during the day, we've got peas growing,
yeah.
we've got kale, we've got lettuce.
It doesn't
chard.
look absolutely fabulous. It
Well-
looks a little cold
Well,
right now, but
when it
they're
warms up in
growing.
there,
Yeah.
everything perks back up and it's like, oh yeah,
Exactly.
we're still here.
But like
Right.
say you got the greenhouse effect, which is, for folks, that's basically you've got short wavelength light coming into a structure, whether it's poly or glass, and then that energy is converted to long infrared wavelength. It gets trapped. It can't leave the structure, and that's why what's called greenhouse effect. And as you say, Lindsay, what you get is a greenhouse effect. Even in unheated houses, the soil warms up during the day, and it maintains a temperature that's very adequate for these cool season crops.